So to continue, many an employee meeting presentation could benefit from using these 4 components as a checklist. Including them in a relatable story could enhance your message to be 63% more likely to positively affect your audience. Having trouble with my screen advance. There we go. So once you have your 4 components, next you need to structure your story. Rather than the traditional beginning, middle, and end, think of it as normal, things how they are, explosion, something happens, and a new normal, things are different. Part of creating a story that people will care about is helping them place it in their lives. It's that empathy we talked about. That's why the normal is the most important part of the story, and the part where you include those 4 components, the characters, moment, emotions, and details. This gives your audience a reason to care. If you leave out the normal, then the story may shock them, but it won't stick with them. They haven't had a chance to empathize. The explosion is pretty obvious. That's when things are going along as normal and then they're different. It can be good different, bad different, it doesn't matter. The new normal, or what life is like now. In your story, this could be your employee living happily ever after because she used your preferred approach to solve a problem. The new normal is where all the power is for business. Tell a story about an employee whose work was one way. They found your approach and their work was changed forever. Tell me how it is now. What's good about it? That's the power of the new normal. You get to paint the picture. You're inviting your audience to imagine how their lives will change if they try it your way. A few caveats, though. A mission statement is not a story. A brand is not a story. Marketing jargon, not a story. Also, a story doesn't have to be complicated. We saw that with the Warby Parker story. Hall describes the 4 types of stories that you will develop for use in your business. Don't worry, you don't have to develop all these at once, but you will find yourself using these 4 types of stories over and over again. Hall developed this grid, divided the stories up, and aligned them so that you can quickly decide which kind of story you need from the 4 across the top: value, founder, purpose, or customer story. And then moving down the left side, why? What's the purpose? For which audience? Who's the primary audience? And storyteller, who should tell this story? I know it looks overwhelming, but because we are focused on the value of stories for communicating with employees you are managing, let's focus on the 2 types of stories whose primary audiences include employees. The founder story is a good all-around motivational story that can be used with any stakeholder. So employees are one of the stakeholder groups you might tell your founder story to. But where the real bread and butter is for employees is the purpose story. Purpose stories are used to motivate, to build your team identity, to create culture, and to align employees with organizational identity. This is the why that Simon Sinek is always talking about. Employees are the primary audience, and the story should be told by leaders, executives, and managers. Excuse me. These are the stories the Ritz-Carlton managers tell their teams every day. They are purpose stories. Howard Gardner says that stories constitute the single most powerful weapon in a leader's arsenal. Hall says that stories are the best way to bridge the gap you find between the talent employees bring and the performance you want from your employees. To get that performance, use purpose stories to align your team, inspire them to act, and get the level of commitment, cooperation, and accomplishment that you desire. 21st century employees want transcendent purpose. They aren't just in it for the money. They want to know they are making a difference in the world, that their work creates value in real people's lives. Purpose is a major trend in organizational design and operation. Kevin Oakes, CEO and co-founder of the human resource research and consulting firm I4CP, cites having a clear purpose as more important than the traditional mission, vision, value statements. He says, as you see on the screen, while today many organizations have vision, mission, values statements, the concept of purpose has usurped those traditional statements. Sense of purpose has become an expectation of both current and future employees, and organizations are under pressure to exhibit purpose in their operational practices. This is what we see measured sometimes in corporate social responsibility or sustainable practice. The trick in using story to convey purpose is first to pick a clear, specific message you need to relay. Then choose the story that best illustrates it. Start with the point. Ask yourself what you want the audience to think, feel, know, or do as a result. That will point you to the right story. Purpose stories aren't just told because they're great stories, but because they have an important message for your team. If the message isn't clear, the story won't be effective. This is also what keeps you from sounding arrogant and bombastic when you tell stories from your own life. Leaders often tell biographical purpose stories. I'll never forget the day I learned the importance of a heartfelt apology. It was a rainy Saturday morning. I should have already been gearing up to walk the dog, but I sat at my desk procrastinating by looking over the month's sales reports, and so on. Such a story can sound self-focused unless it clearly relates an important message. It's good to spend extra time at the end of the story reinforcing the message as the most important aspect of the story. Keep in mind that you may be telling a story about your experience. You are the character, but the story isn't about you. It's about the listener. Include relatable details, like the dog in the rain, rather than unrelatable details like the fact that you were the keynote speaker at a fundraiser the night before. You want to get your audience empathizing and feeling as if they are in the story. Make it easy for them. Sharing your authentic emotions will draw the audience in to empathize with you. These are the little grippy parts that add texture for them to hold on to that connection they will naturally feel for the identifiable, relatable character. Were you frustrated? Peeved? Embarrassed? Say so. The emotions don't have to be really big and dramatic. Maybe you felt indifference or a sense of relief. But the key is to be vulnerable. Hall says that research has shown time and again that being vulnerable in business has the power to propel you to success. Brene Brown's research has shown that the root of social connection lies in vulnerability. It achieves increasing trust, and that results in more sharing of ideas and increasing loyalty. Also, tell stories from your Saturdays, from your vacations, from your pets, your family, a trip to the grocery store. Choose settings your employees will relate to, but that also add dimension to your personality, making you even more relatable. The moment. This transports them into the world of the story. I bet you still remember where the Warby Parker founder was when he left his glasses. On a plane. Look for the explosion in your story. Then ask yourself about the setting. This is how you find that moment. Where was I? What was I looking at? Who was with me? What was I doing with my hands? What was the weather? What day or time of day was it? Include those details in your story to draw the audience into a specific experience, a specific moment. Building universal truths to your details. Rain is cold and wet. Say so. Umbrellas are tricky to operate and exasperate users on windy days. Build it in. Build a familiar environment so that your listeners will enter into it with you and begin to experience it from your perspective. This is what builds that connection and oneness that makes stories so powerful, that your purpose, as it unfolds in the story naturally and powerfully, becomes their purpose as well. This will foster that alignment you are always seeking in organizational culture and identity. So, why do we say that purpose stories build alignment? When your team knows your history, how you were founded, the setbacks you faced, and how you've persevered, they are 40% more likely to say that the work they do makes a difference in the world. They identify with the organization and become a vital participant in the culture. Hall asks, does your team know how the company was founded? The biggest account landed? The biggest failures? The greatest trials and triumphs, catastrophes and comebacks? When the day-to-day of coming to work becomes tedious, when your team misses a goal, when your organization faces adversity, which it will, do your people know that they are part of something bigger? If you tell your stories, they will. In his recent book on culture change management, Kevin Oakes writes that in our research, stories are a common component of any healthy culture, especially when renovating that culture. In fact, 73% of successful culture change efforts relied on stories. To wrap up, let's touch on a few common considerations and pitfalls. How long should a story be? Usually you have a budget. 5 minutes at the annual meeting, 1 page of the company newsletter, maybe 30 seconds in a meeting on the fly. We live in the age of micro stories and flash fiction, but novels are still selling, and some of them are more than 50,000 words. Length should always fit the context in which you are telling it, and will usually require tough editing to fit in the time budget you're allowed. But be careful when you're cutting your stories. When you cut them down to fit that time or space you have, don't lose all that granular detail from the normal that helps your audience relate. Don't cut the pause and sigh of bliss when the harried woman relaxes into the Calgon bath. Don't lose the emotions that your listener will feel along with your character. That's the transformational part of the story experience. And don't forget your goal for the story. If you're asking your team to stretch toward a challenging goal, don't tell them how good you felt the last time they did. Share a story, or better yet, ask a team member to share a story of when they pushed themselves and how good it felt. Your satisfaction with them may not be relatable, but the satisfaction of the team member who pushed through it will be. If you have the option to use photos, like in a presentation, don't lean too hard on them. If your story is good enough, if it has all the feels and relatable characters and details, you won't need all the pictures. 1 or 2 will do, and you'd rather people make their own pictures in their imagination to make the story more effective than providing them the pictures on the screen. Oh, and don't, don't practice the life out of your stories. Don't memorize them word for word. Leave room for spontaneous emotion in the telling. And now that you are a storyteller, when and where should you tell stories? Anytime, anywhere. Presentations, employee meetings, team retreats, one-on-ones, pitching potential team candidates, selling to those candidates in the interview process, you name it. So now that you really are a storyteller, when might telling a good purpose story improve your business? I can't wait to hear it. The references that were vital to the preparation of this presentation included Michael Cafferty's Management, a Faith-Based Perspective, Kendra Hall's Stories That Stick, and Kevin Oakes' Culture Renovation. If you're interested in learning more about renovating organizational culture for success, please join us on May 20th for the next SmartWorks Business Books at Greenville University Smart Center. Email me for a Zoom link if you will not be in the Greenville area but would like to attend. Thank you very much.